Hello guys, it's me. Today we'll be reacting to I Don't Like Dana White. If you like this video, leave a comment. Man, man, link to the original video and channel will be in the description down below. Without further ado, let's get into today's video, shall we? Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm not sure why that was there.
I've recently been getting big into the UFC again. I'd always watched the big fights, and when I was in high school, I watched a lot more of it, especially GSP and Machida bouts. Lyoto Machida is my favorite fighter ever, but post high school, I stopped watching as much and only tuned in to the big fights, and that's the way it's been for like the last 12, 15 years maybe, until recently. I've been getting more and more into the UFC, and as such, I've started hating Dana White more and more. I feel like as you pay more attention to this sport, you unfortunately have to pay more attention to this fucking fungus. Now, the obvious that everyone talks about is how he refuses to pay his fighters appropriate wages.
I'm sorry, what? 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 This is a good video. I gotta leave it alone. But what? He doesn't what? He doesn't play his fighters a fair wage. You you what? You can't do that, right? You can't do that. That
Like, and I'm not even here to really dive into this can of worms
you're
here.
like
I'll briefly
why?
mention it though that it is sickening how underpaid the athletes are in the UFC. The only ones making like
This
real
is
money are
just
like the actual superstars, but like their starter contracts of the
that's
12 12,
that's
12 the
bullshit.
show, 12 if you win. That should be criminal. Dana White should be in handcuffs right now for that kind of shit. It's fucking disgusting how underpaid UFC athletes are if they're not champions. And it's something Sean O'Malley mentioned as well, though Sean O'Malley seems perfectly content being financially cucked by Dana White because
Bro,
he often defends it.
this is
But Sean O'Malley was
oh
talking about
my
the money he made as a
god.
champion being significantly different from the money he makes not being a champion, which I
Can't
think
do
most
that.
people would expect. But the difference is absurd. I think a lot of you have probably heard that UFC fighters, when they're starting out, have to still have a part time job elsewhere. They can't do the UFC full time. It's not until you are literally like a top five cream of the crop level athlete in the UFC that you can actually make livable money there, it seems. And the bonuses that they introduced are kind of just a band aid for the problem of Dana White being too cheap to actually pay his athletes. And I also just saw
That's
reports this week
despicable,
that they are
bro.
now no
What?
longer accommodating team travel. They're only compensating for the head coach. Another classy maneuver here from Dana
Okay.
Worm
What
White,
the hell?
who just has to find all kinds of grubby penny pinching schemes because we have to remember the UFC is just a tiny little indie promotion that's merged with the fucking WWE,
Like,
and the
come
UFC
on.
only generated $1.5 billion in 2025. That's not nearly enough to satiate Dana White's gluttony. I know I said I wasn't going to fully open this can of worms, and I still haven't. This is
Jesus.
the tip of the iceberg when it comes to UFC
Oh
wages
man.
and how they just don't want to
It's
pay
just
their fighters at all. Now, I'll go ahead and move on to some other Dana White dunk topics in recent memory here because he just keeps making a fucking fool of himself and I have to clown on him for it. But before that, I want to make a
wow.
mention that I also despise the UFC WWE merger. I am just counting down the days until Dana White falls into his K hole and then really gets convinced that he should be
Yeah.
more involved with the WWE, so he tries to start shoving his meat over there and strong arming some of his ideas in
Okay.
place. Like, listen, guys, listen, let me pitch you on something. What about Stone Cold Steve Austin versus The Undertaker in a slippery dickory match? First one to
What
hold the other's cock for a
the
3 count wins. Thoughts? Because I could just see him doing some dumb
what?
shit like that. He is just a factory of zero IQ ideas and even worse execution. Anyway, though, I want to show you a clip that I just saw this morning. This is from an interview that I think is 2 months old, and I think it really showcases just how evil of a man Dana White is. Now, A little context before this clip plays. I don't think Dana White has any respect at all for his wife. A while ago, I made a video covering an incident where Dana White and his wife got into a bit of a slapping match at a New Year's Eve party in public.
What?
She had slapped Dana White, and then he responded by slapping her multiple times in public, in full view of everything. When I covered that, people were very upset with me for talking about it, and then even outright denying that it was real, that this didn't happen, this is a fucking lie. And then Dana White himself had to do like the world's smallest violin press tour about it, like, listen, don't defend me, this was bad. And I'm not trying to just regurgitate all the talking points from back then, but in the clip you can see he's already grabbing his wife when she slaps him, and then he slaps her multiple times and pushes her away. And it's not like he was in any danger here. Let's not pretend that he had just been attacked by fucking Brock Lesnar. This has been yapped about till the cows come home already. I know that. As everyone's already said numerous times, it's bad on all fronts. The slap from his wife is no good, and then the retaliation from him to slap her multiple times, also very not good. The reason why I'm bringing this up again is because after what we've seen him do publicly, like in that instance, and now what he's also now just said publicly about what he made his wife do in regards to the birth of his child to compensate his schedule, it just really feels like the most loveless, miserable marriage imaginable. It just seems fucking terrible.
My son Aiden, when she was pregnant with him, the due date was the Chuck Liddell fight.
Oh, Lord.
And I said to the doctor, this ain't going to work. This doesn't work for me.
Man, I don't know where this medical field medicine is at, but
So we scheduled a C-section to take him early.
oh, really?
Yeah.
So was she gonna go natural?
No.
Okay, but there was a C-section. You're like, no, we got to back this up. Like,
Yeah, was she going to go natural what? Like go in when the baby.
Yeah.
Yeah, when the baby's due, you.
Right.
Hey, the baby's due. Let's go.
But y'all did a
That was supposed to
scheduled
be
C-
Saturday on the fucking Chuck Liddell fight. That was the date that they pinpointed.
right?
I'm
You're like, nah, this ain't gonna happen, Jack.
it's not going to work for
Like,
me.
no, we're gonna be walking out in Vegas. Like, something got to change. But
That's
you change,
crazy.
okay, nah, something. But
So
but
digital.
Whoa.
What's that?
I just built a budgeting app in Base 44.
Guys, Nina just built an app.
Detox.
He goes on to say digital detox does
That conversation has got to be the most out of touch shit I've ever heard. There's like no way. There's no way there's no way they're real. They can't be real people. There's no way. There's no way.
not exist for him. This story is just vile. Like, I don't know how anyone could hear this and walk away with a positive impression of that. He jeopardized the safety and the health of not just his wife, but also his fucking baby, so that way he could go to the Chuck Liddell fight. So he had his wife undergo a C-section early in order to compensate for his schedule so he could still make that fight. That's deplorable. And they're talking about it, like joking about it, jovial, like it's not something super serious. That's a huge deal. You're going to C-section your baby early solely so you can go to that fight. Again, that puts his wife in danger. That puts his baby in danger. That's crazy to me that anyone's looking at this as anything other than just downright evil. This is so scummy. And he's proudly talking about it like, yeah, I don't slow down. I just don't slow down. My wife knows this. I'll be going all night. She knew this getting into it. In fact, with the birth of our baby here, I even made her get a C-section early. Ha ha ha. So that way we can see that Chuck Liddell fight, That's, what the fuck, man? That's crazy. Ordinarily, to a sane person, the birth of your child is going to be one of the most important, most memorable, most meaningful moments of your life. But to Dana White, that's just an obstacle, because now it's potentially infringing on his ability to go watch the Chuck Liddell fight. That's how much he cares about his promotion. He needs to make sure, the birth of his child is fucking, that's peanuts. That's nothing. That's scraps. Spits on that. We're going to speed that one up. Let's get through that real quickly so that way you can go to the real thing that matters, the Chuck Liddell fight. Like, even the most diehard of UFC fans should hear this and be like, wow, that's extremely concerning. That's just genuinely fucked up. And I have seen some cope with people saying he's probably just exaggerating or kidding around. I watched most of that podcast there. He doesn't go back and say like, oh, that story I told about making my wife have a C-section to deliver our baby early for the sake of the Chuck Liddell fight so I could still participate. Oh yeah, I made that up. I pulled that out of my ass. That was just supposed to be a good goof, ha 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 moment, you know what I mean? So as far as I am aware, this is a very real thing that happened. Something that he is very proud of. which I think is just sick. I think that is extremely twisted. And I also think it showcases his perspective on the UFC, where I believe Dana White is under the impression that people watch the UFC for him. Like, I think he believes that he is the UFC, not the fighters. And that's, I think, also demonstrated in how he pays them, or really doesn't pay them. So, him making it of, like, paramount importance that he is there for the Chuck Liddell fight, because that's what matters, is that Dana White is there for it. So he's willing to make the sacrifice of his wife's safety, the safety of the baby, jeopardizing both of their health, for the sole sake of ensuring that he can still be there, because that is what people care about. It is. I think it's just super fucked up. I truly do. And I would also imagine that most people that watch the UFC probably have the same viewpoint I do on it, which is the fighters are the ones that make the UFC, not the other way around. I think if the UFC didn't have the talent that it does with the fighters that it has, it would not be in the same state that it is. Fighters are the ones that made the UFC successful.
So I've seen a lot of fans and viewers online commenting or discussing what they perceive as a lot of AI-generated content in the broadcast that maybe wasn't in previous iterations of the UFC. Is this something that's coming with the Paramount deal, or just a new direction for the UFC, or do you have any insight on that?
What does that mean?
AI stuff, commercials, part of the promotional content, just AI in the UFC in general. I've seen fans complaining about.
Oh, yeah? What are they complaining about?
I guess I've seen people saying that the UFC should be paying artists instead of using generative AI, stuff like that.
Give me a fucking break. AI is coming, and if we're using AI, who gives a shit? People are upset about it. We should use artists. How about this? Shut the fuck up and watch the fights.
The most unsurprising statement ever uttered from a human being here. Dana White doesn't even pay the fighters. You think he cares about paying artists? Absolutely not. This fucking goober, this goddamn zombie would 1000% be using AI fighters if he could to save even more money on it. So it's not at all a shock to see him with this perspective about, like, who cares if we're not paying artists? Who cares if we're using AI? Just shut up and consume our slop. Just watch our AI and put your thumb in your mouth and be done with it. Naturally, that's what Dana White is going to say about it. And expect a lot more AI from Dana White as he starts to recognize more and more how much money he can save by just farting out AI-generated shit into the UFC programming. So don't expect that to stop anytime soon. He'll continue to go hog wild with the AI, which doesn't elevate the production or anything. It doesn't make it better. It does make it worse, but it saves Dana White money. And that's the most important thing to Dana White. There's so much more. There's just plenty I could keep poking around about when it comes to this fucking scumbag, but I've already been going here for a while yapping about it, so I'll go ahead and stop here. I do not like Dana White, but I really, really like the fighters in the UFC. It's such a fucking shame. Hopefully the day will come where they're actually paid appropriately for their talent and their hard work, but with Dana White still at the helm, I wouldn't hold my breath on it. It fucking sucks. He fucking sucks. Anyway, that's really about it. See ya.
Alright,
Hey guys, do you like Disney Plus or...
oh, I paused you. But anyway, that's pretty much it for today's video. If you liked it, leave a like, leave a comment, and yeah, that's pretty much it. See ya.